Hello, everybody. Once again, I'm Lehman Crafton Jr., aka Zorbalichan Less Than Guru. Today, I'm going to combine my Torg Tuesday with my bi weekly update because a couple of games over the last couple of weeks were canceled because of life events, which happen. And in the future, coming up with holidays such as 4th of July, there might be some more cancelizations. So, cancellations, not cancelizations. Cancellations of certain dates. So maybe in the future, if I can come up with a common theme, I will combine them like today. Today's common theme is transparency. And I have talked specifically about transparency with Torg and specifically, and I might have talked about it somewhat with Earth Dawn, but I also want to bring in Palladium as well because that's another game that I game master. Personally, I do not like transparency, either as a game master nor as a player, and I'll explain why. Um, Before I do that, though, I will give the main reason, which I've been told people, games will have transparency, and that is to keep a role playing game from becoming a guessing game, specifically Torg Eternity when there are target numbers. And the thing is I guess when the developers were making the game Torg Eternity, they did not want, I guess you could say, resources to be wasted. So if you don't know what your target number is and you generate a total, you might need to guess, hey, do I think I need an action card or an adrenaline card or a willpower placed upon this? Do I think I need a possibility? And you kind of have to guess. And maybe you'll have players that get upset or they don't like the aspect or the concept of losing resources that might not have been needed to be used. So, say you already got an outstanding success and you don't realize it, so you throw down an action card to give yourself a +3 and you're happy with that. You get outstanding, and then you find out I had outstanding to begin with. Well, that would require one, the game master to actually tell you, hey, you really didn't need that, and I made you do that. As a game master, I just wouldn't say what they needed to begin with. I would just say you made an outstanding. On the other side, maybe you spend and you really want that action, you really want to succeed. Maybe you really want that outstanding success, but you throw down that action card or spend that possibility or whatever resources you want to use to boost that, and you don't get the desired effect. And for me, that guesswork is part of the role playing. It's part of the, you are not, say, engineers going into a battle using, your calculator to figure out distances and things like that. I understand why some people like that. I understand that that is a concept in Torg Eternity. When you watch me game master Torg Eternity, you will see that I do transparency, but in original Torg, I never did transparency, never saw a need for it. None of my players complained about it, and part of the suspense, the drama, part of that was deciding when to stop, or if you even want to start in the first place. If you just accept the role as it is, or if you want to start throwing down cards, using possibilities, hero cards, drama cards, etc., and getting to a number that you're satisfied with. And then over time of the encounter, whether that's a battle or an interrogation or something, but over time, mainly with combat, but it could be other things, you then narrow down it. It is one of those that I've been using in D&D and everything. The 18 hits, but the 15 doesn't. And you need something in between there, and then you get the 17 and the 17 hits. So then the 15 doesn't. Is it a 16 Almars, or is it a 17 that's needed? And you kind of over time narrow down, and once you narrow down that number, then you can start doing that. And to me, that simulates, it's not something where the game is a direct real world conversion, but it simulates in a logical manner for me the idea of when you first jump into combat, you don't necessarily know what's going on. And as you see your shots or your swings or whatever, you see your attacks or things doing to that other person, your offenses, and you see what actually works against it and what doesn't, and then your knowledge increases based upon the amount of time you are engaging in that conflict. That's how my thought is. Now, I do all my games currently on virtual tabletops, Roll20 specifically. And Roll20, the Torg character sheet, is very good with transparency. I will say that. They have a thing where you can choose the attacks, the damage when you damage, to do it by toughness. And you enter the opponent's toughness, and it will automatically calculate all the wounds and all the shock for you and just give you a number. Boom, right there, the output, instead of doing even the simple, for every 5 points above it, it's 1 wound, 2 shock. Not terribly hard math, but any hit a button is faster and better than math, in my opinion. It makes it easier. So when that character sheet was made and it has that option, it does have the option of just telling what the effect value is, and then you can look at what the toughness is, compare them, subtract the two, figure out how many wounds and shock, if they take wounds and shock, how much they take. So having said that, I still prefer not transparent. And the thing that kind of sealed me on it, and I've talked about this when I've talked about Earth Dawn, is the Earth Dawn character sheet in Roll20 is an amazing, crazy character sheet that pretty much figures out everything. And then it also has exploding dice, like Torg, and except on ones and your maximums, because it's not just d6s or d20s, but if it's a 1 or whatever the max die is, if the die explodes, it will give you those values, but otherwise it doesn't. So it might tell you you failed by 7, but it won't tell you what your value is. And since everything keeps exploding or it stops, it won't tell you that. So you will never, ever be able to tell what you rolled and look and say, I missed it by this, or I succeeded by this much, therefore it's this number. But by the fact of what your average rolls and stuff over time, you kind of can sort of get that input. And to me, I get immersed into it a lot better. And that character sheet is wonderful because it'll even calculate how many wounds, and it'll tell you you did a wound to it. And it will tell you also if the creature has been knocked unconscious or dead, or if you've been knocked unconscious or dead. And it will tell you that, hey, your armor took a lot of that blow, or your armor took a little bit of that blow. So then you can kind of figure out, okay, a lot of my damage went through, or barely any of my damage went through. And there is a little bit of ambiguity in that. And I like that. I like that lot as a player. And I understand a lot of players don't. They want those hard numbers. But when I'm hit, I can see, everybody can see my damage bar go down. And the Game Master has said it that the numbers only show to you. So other people just see how much damage you're taking. That counts up. It's very much like Torg, the opposite of D&D or Palladium. But you can see the red bar fill. And other people can kind of get a relative gauge of at least they're half dead, or they're a quarter, or they're just got a nick, or they're hanging on by a thread before they either get knocked unconscious or die. To me, that's more immersive. That's where I can, look at that and say, okay, if my character is looking at that character, I'm not gonna, in a simulationist type atmosphere, I'm going to look at a person and I'm going to see that they're wounded. I'm going to see that they have gashes. I'm not going to see that they've taken 30 points of damage, or they've taken 2 wounds, or that they're only at 10 hit points out of 50 hit points, things like that. So that is something that I enjoy. Last adventure I did was Palladium. That is homebrewed. And one of the things that I did, because that character actually has a whisper button and a public. So if you want to whisper to the Game Master, you can hit that button on the character sheet, and until you switch that button to the other button, all the rolls are Game Master rolls. So only the Game Master. And I tested it before the game, and I, as a Game Master, opened up the character sheet, and I hit the whisper. and I did a roll, and the character or the player could not see the roll. It only went to me. And that to me is so awesome. To me, that is excellent. If people are walking down the hallway, I can look at one of the characters or all the characters who have, say, locate secret doors and compartments, and I can just hit that button. It tells me, did they succeed or not? If they succeed, I could whisper or just tell in chat to the person, hey, you notice something strange about that wall or that statue or whatever that thing is. Then they know. If not, they walk by it. Anytime you're at a table or anytime that you say, hey, roll of this, they know something is up. And they are going to come up with every way plausible and maybe even implausible to re-roll that until they make it. Whether it's a let's continue and then oh yeah, let's just double check everything. Let's do this. It's always a thing that if the players know what they're rolling, it's gonna bias them towards what they're doing. And during that whole game, I did all rolls only to me. And one, it shocked me that it did not actually take up any extra time. Even when things were hitting, they would press their button. They would see what they rolled when they were attacking, but nobody else saw the attack number. Nobody else saw the damage, and then I would parry or dodge. And my players trust me enough that they know that I'm not just gonna have the creatures dodge just because or parry what just because. And since I record them and put them here on this channel, if they really want to look and make sure that I'm doing things correctly, they can look and make sure that I'm doing things correctly. So there's transparency in that after the fact, I guess you could say. But during the game, I would roll for the monsters, and the people would not see the roll. So if it was really, really bad, in Palladium, if 1 through 4 is a complete miss. So if it was something in like that, if it was like a 1 or 2, I would just say, it looks like they're not going to hit. If the person still wanted to try to parry because they had automatic parry, let them parry. There was no reason not to. But normally they'd say, okay, I trust that, so I'm going to let it miss. If it was close, if it was like, say, like again, if it was a 4 or maybe a 5 or a 6, I would say it looks like it might hit you, it might not. Might hit your armor, it might not hit. And then they would decide, do they want to parry or do they want to spend an action to dodge? The same thing with if they're wearing armor. At the high end, say they had an armor rating of 12. That's a really solid number for low-level characters in my game. So if it rolled a 13, I said, you're not quite sure. Is it going to hit you or the armor? But it's going to hit. Going to do damage to you or damage to your armor. They usually would try to parry, at least to save the some points off of their armor. And I felt that immersed people into it more. They weren't looking at numbers. They were just looking at the idea, the story of the I'm about to get hit or it's really close. And when a natural 20 happened, I basically said, this attack coming from you looks like this person is going to kill you. They are on target. And then the person usually tried to parry and or dodge, because I allow man-at-arms to both try a parry and dodge. It's just a home rule I have. And that really, I think, brought out the story. I, as a game master, even got immersed. Instead of just hitting buttons and going, okay, you got hit for 24 points, I was having to describe what was going on. And the players then, off of my description, were having. So I was more into the story. Instead of just looking at numbers, I was coming up with different ways to say certain things. And I didn't say you took 24 points of damage. I just subtracted 24 points of damage. They have their numbers. They saw what their number was before. They saw what their number was after. And they could go, wow, I took a lot of damage. Other people saw the damage bar decrease and were like, oh, okay, one of the characters at the very beginning got critted, wasn't able to parry or dodge out of the way, got dropped in one hit. Boom. It was the same thing that happened previously when a character got dropped with one hit, but the storytelling wasn't just, here's a bunch of numbers. And that's why, even in Torg Eternity, even though the game says be transparent and we don't want this to be a guessing game, I personally prefer it not to be transparent. There is an endorse rule that I'm pretty sure is going to stay there, but it is in the preview editions, as you would, that has certain nightmares ignore the transparency. And that's to give those, when you finally have something that doesn't have transparency, when you're so used to it, it makes you kind of sit up and take note. And I understand that, but I would probably either not care if I wasn't doing transparency in Torg Eternity, or just give them some other little thing. Not necessarily something very bad or damaging or anything, but just something else. But that's basically what I wanted to say. I understand why people like transparency. When I game master officially or using official rules, I'm fine with doing it transparent. I think that the time, it doesn't either save time, at least on virtual tabletops. To me, it doesn't save time, but it doesn't lessen time, because the time that you save in the battle with people just being able to enter things and me as a game master not having to tell them, in game it might lessen time. Out of game it creates time, because then I am having to make defense templates up so that I can show them, especially ones that don't have the threat cards that come with the certain game master packs, I guess. So it's one of those things. You can agree with me, you can disagree with me. I understand both reasonings, but my own personal enjoyment as both a player and as a game master is to not have it so transparent. Maybe even, as I've said previously, in my Paraverse, I've actually written about it. I called it semi-transparency. Certain things I think are fine. You're climbing that, you need a this to climb it. That's fine. When you're doing something in a conflict, I tend to not like the transparency as much. And I really have a ton of fun as a player in Earth Dawn when I'm not seeing my numbers and I'm not seeing other players' numbers. And then I'm not concerned about other players and what they can do that I can't do, and comparing myself. And if I'm in a fight with so and so, I could beat them up, or I couldn't beat them up, or whatever. And in Palladium, I'm seeing the same thing. At least this last adventure, where I just took away all of it, and all roles were game master roles. A lot of whispering going on, a lot of things that people just don't want other people to know about, whether it's deep dark secrets or just it's none other beeswax kind of mentality. It's fun and engaging, in my opinion. So again, my opinion, you can vary. If you want to talk about it, talk about it. Do you like transparency? If you have other reasons why you like it, is it because you don't trust other players? Is it because you don't trust your game master? I can see that there are some shady game masters out there. I can't say that we're all like on a different level. Just like anybody, you have different ranges. Is it because of that? Is it because of something else? Is it because it really, really would annoy you to use a resource in Torg Eternity that you didn't feel that you would have needed to use if you knew what the target number was, the difficulty number, or either way, not hitting it, using up resources and not hitting it, or using up resources and you would hit it to begin with, and either way you feel like you've expended resources for no reason. Me personally, I think that's part of the drama and the excitement, but I understand that other people don't see that. Please, again, put a comment in if you want to. Subscribe if you're watching this and not subscribed. I don't do D&D very much, except for how it might affect other games, especially like my Palladium game. My Palladium game is set in the 4th edition D&D world, and every once in a while you might see some D&D stuff from many different editions pop into it, because I have no problems stealing stuff from other games and bringing it into my game, because some people might get focused. It's Palladium, and then I throw in something from a different system, and it's like, wow, I didn't know this was in Palladium. Well, it wasn't until I threw it in there. And it goes with the whole transparency thing. I like keeping people on their toes. It's like when my top shelf over here is Torg Eternity, 3 shelves down right there is original Torg. I'll pull bunches of stuff out of original Torg that haven't been converted. And if people aren't familiar with both systems, something new, it might be new to them. So, having said that, once again, I'm Lima Crafting Jr., aka Zorval John Mustang Guru, and until next time, I will catch you later.